very good afternoon to everyone, and I welcome you all to today's webinar on a skill set for next generation legal professionals. So I'm Ruchi Sinha. I'm currently heading the Chettinad School of Law Care. Before starting to the webinar, I'll take your 2 minutes time for the introduction. So the Chettinad Group, with a legacy of over 60 years in education, have been pioneers in providing progressive learning environment across Tamil Nadu. They are currently responsible for over 12,000 students in 22 private, governmental aided schools and colleges for medicine, dentistry, engineering, law, architecture, physiotherapy, nursing, allied health sciences, and pharmaceutical sciences. Chettinad School of Law is recognized by BCI and approved by UGC and provides an environment that offers high quality education through active learning methods, qualified and experienced faculty, and exposure through legal internships. The School of Law is a member of IUCN Academy of Environmental Law and International Association of Law Schools. So now I would like to introduce you all to the guest for today's session, Mr. Sameer Shah. Mr. Sameer Shah is a well-known international arbitrator and mediator with over 2 decades of practice. He is the program director of Indian branch of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, London, CR. Sir is also a panel mediator in Mainland Hong Kong Joint Mediation Center, Hong Kong, and Mediation Center, Dubai. He has been associated as a panel mediator, judge, and mentor with different teams participating in William C. Wiss International Commercial Arbitration Moot Competition and International Moot Competition at Shanghai, China. Mr. Shah regularly conducts training courses for CR India at Mumbai, Delhi, and Chennai for training professionals as arbitrators. Sir is also a member of International Bar Association and Inter-Pacific Bar Association, an associate member of World Trade Center Association and Global Collaborative Law Council, USA. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So before I hand over the control to our presenter, just a few preliminaries about the webinar. So we will take up the questions at the end, so please stick around for the questions and answer session. And all of you can also send us your questions even in the between of the session through the chat box, and we will take it up at the end of the session. So without further ado, I once again welcome our speaker, and I will kickstart the discussion on this topic with a question which I, as a legal professional, also wonder. Like, there has been a major shift in the delivery of legal education, sir. So what do you think that, what are the changes as a legal professional you see in the legal education in past few decades in India?
Thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this very interesting topic, at least from the student's perspective. And I also thank the Chettinad School of Law for giving me this opportunity to be on this platform. So, you see, as a lawyer myself, having almost now 25 years of active practice, I have seen the rise and fall in the legal education system as such, compared to what education I, as a student, got during my days and what is happening now. Law as such has always been said to be a noble profession. Noble because because we are dealing with human beings, day in, day out. We are dealing with clients. So there's supposed to be a human and holistic approach towards the lawyers as such, towards their clients. However, of late, unfortunately, there's a extreme, not extreme, but there is a very great shift from this so-called, from this earlier noble profession to a more materialistic profession, I would say, more commercialized venture, I would now say. There are many factors which we'll discuss definitely, but it is no more as such being viewed as a noble profession. Now, what has happened since, if I just talk from, let's say, since last, from 60s to 80s, 1960s to 1980s, if we talk about, everything was still coming out of the British influence. And though we are still under that British influence, we are still following English laws and the precedents, but there was a need to at least have our own identity so far the legal education was concerned, and therefore various reforms were, you know, suggested to the government, and therefore in 1961 the Advocates Act came into play, which actually regulates the whole legal profession as such in our country. BCA was set up, and then which is a regulatory body for the legal education, and things started moving up slowly, definitely, with defined curriculums. The trust was on giving a quality education and at least trying to sustain in this competitive world. However, over the period of time, though things started moving, but the quality of education was not what was required for us to compete, at least in the international uh, play. And therefore, another reforms were suggested in mid 1980s, which led to the setting up of the national law school system, starting with Bangalore in the year 1986. Now that had at that stage did revolutionize, did have a sort of a revolution in the legal education imparting in our country. It was on a very, it was a very innovative and novel step which was initiated by the late Professor Madhavan Menon, uh, who was known as the father of national law school system in our country. So by that system, it was expected and to achieve what was lacking then in the legal education field. Somehow that did achieve those objectives. We did find the level of education, the quality of education improving to certain extent by the coming up of national law schools in Bangalore and thereafter in many other states. However, still it was felt, and personally I also feel that the quality as such of legal education is still not at par if we compare it to countries like UK and US. And we see that there is a huge number of students going to US and UK and other countries for for legal education. Why that is so? I mean, we need to at least now focus on why there is so much of migration of students going to from India to other places. Though we have more than I think more than 1,000 law schools now in our country, and there are, I mean, almost all of them are full to capacity. But is it actually giving that kind of a education, or is it actually all these 1,000 law schools are actually able to give that level and quality of education? The answer, in my opinion, is unfortunately no, and that is why we have so many backlog of cases coming up. I mean, though it is not only the education to be blamed for, but yes, the root is the legal education, the system as such. So what is required? What is required as of now? So what we have seen is, yes, definitely there have been a tremendous improvement. The curriculum what when I used to study is totally different from what now the students are studying. And the way the teaching has been imparting is has definitely has changed. The teachers, as such, have changed. Students' perspective, their ideas, all have definitely have changed. But at the ultimately, it is still not. We are still not at par with other countries so far as legal education, or for that matter, any good education system as such of our country is concerned. Apart from we have exceptions like IIMs and IITs, but apart from that, none of our colleges or universities figures in any even top 100 even today, be it legal education or other education. Why? The reason is somehow, unfortunately, our I think somebody has
I
muted this.
request the participants to mute themselves, please. Please mute yourselves, please. I request the participants to mute themselves, please, so that we can proceed with it.
Ma'am, this actually is an example of what would be coming, what would be discussing.
Yes, exactly, sir. Just a second, sir. I'll request the host also to mute it down. Okay, sir. We'll proceed, sir. So, actually, when you were talking about the changing scenario, which you have, already discussed it in very detail, I have this one question, which I think everybody would love to know. That exactly what are the skill sets which are required by the next generation legal professionals, because they have to cope up with this change in the system. How do they do that?
Uh, you see, before I answer actually the skill set as such, I would go with a general observation that, as I said, uh, apart from the legal education as such, the system as such to be blamed, and which requires reform even now. Uh, but at the same time, it is the stakeholders, I mean, the students themselves, or those people who are opting for legal education themselves are to be blamed. And why I say so, unfortunately, though I am addressing the students right now, so with all due respect to all of them, what I have seen is uh, the the students as such, or those who are opting for legal education, they don't have that passion for that subject. Now, understand one thing: if you don't have passion for doing anything, you cannot be successful. Today in our country, though as I discussed, we have more than 1,000 plus law schools, and there would be, if you just take a minimum of 100 students a batch, you can imagine the number of students coming out each year. However, first, there is no that great a demand as such for them. But at the same time, even demand is less, but at the same time, the supply of good, efficient lawyers is equally less. And why? Because, as I said, first of all, the students or the person don't have, who opt for at least law as a career or as an education, doesn't have that actual passion to pursue it actually as a career. Second, they are there maybe out of just sake of taking a degree, which is prevalent more so in modern part of our country, where degree is more important mainly for the matrimonial purpose rather than the education as such. Third, they opt because they don't have any other option. So law becomes the last option, the last resort kind of a thing to take as a education. Fourth, they are there either because they are being pressurized by the parents, or they are there because their friends are there. So if we just go by the percentages, according to me, if we filter out all this, hardly 10 to 15% remain who are actually, serious about the subject as such and to pursue it as a career. Now, mind you, even after this, after they are serious enough, many of them just after finishing LLB would turn to doing something different, some other curriculum or some other education, some other field. And even if they opt for law, then they will not be going for litigation. They will not be going for court practice. They would try to be sitting in a plush air conditioned office in a corporate scenario. Now, this is actually spoiling the whole system as such. So what I would suggest is, first of all, the basic skill to be a good lawyer. Before you become a good lawyer, at least to be a good student, is to have a passion for this subject. You must have that passion to pursue this law as a career. Second, apart from the passion, you must have the aptitude. Now, mind you, passion alone will not make you successful. I mean, you may have passion to hearing to music, but you don't know how to play anything. So that's not going to work. So the second part is aptitude. Aptitude means, do you have that kind of a desire to excel or at least achieve something in that particular field? That is important. And third, compatibility. You may be loving music, you may have the desire, but you don't have that skill to be a good, let's say, musician. If you don't have the skill, then don't waste your time. You may have desire, but many times it also matters about compatibility, your inner compatibility, inbuilt. You know, though yes, you can be trained, you can acquire, but if you don't have that compatibility, if you don't have these three traits, it's better you don't do this and pursue something where you can really excel and be successful. So apart from these three basic skill set, what every student must have before they become a lawyer as such, I think to be a good lawyer, you must have the habit of reading. All right, not newspapers, but actually some, even yes, why not newspapers? But it also depends how you are reading and what you are reading. You see, if you are reading newspaper as a storybook, it's not going to work. You have to read something to understand it. See, reading is different, understanding is different. You may be listening now, even now, I am saying, even in during this webinar, there are people who are listening, but are they actually understanding? That's the difference. That is where the difference comes. It happens, it may be happen. I mean, the student would relate themselves having this experience in their classroom. So teacher would be saying, I mean, teacher would be just teaching and saying whatever, writing on the blackboard or maybe on the iPad or something, but they are not bothered. Their mind is somewhere else. So you are not understanding. You are actually not interested. But yes, since you have ears, you are listening. So that's the difference. Listening and understanding. And this is going to help you not even in your life as a student, but also in your life as a lawyer. Because during, let's say, in court proceedings, if you are not understanding, even though you are listening, you will lose.
So, sir, what I can gather here from your, little thing, what you said here is that you are trying to, give this idea to the students that they have to be lifelong learners rather than just focusing on completion of the degree, right? So
Yeah.
with that, I would want to continue this discussion because I guess this is a very good, like these kind of points which you have highlighted here. With this skill set, I guess the young legal professionals will be ready and equipped to face the challenges of the 21st century, be it what. And but we also would want to know that there has been a particular notion, you already talked about it, about that legal profession, that it's the last option, or people don't have the passion for it, and which you yourself has experienced, okay, that because you are a renowned international arbitrator and mediator, and apart from being an excellent advocate. So my question to you is that what do you think about the career options the students should look forward to in the law profession? Because the idea of just opting for litigation has changed a lot over the years. So what do you have to say about it, sir?
Well, before I answer this, let me just add to what I was just telling about the skill set as such.
Yeah.
I just give you one example of my own, learning, how I started my career, and which should be, I mean, which I would request everybody to do that kind of a learning to actually understand what is the process all about. I mean, they don't teach you in law schools, unfortunately, even not now. All right, they don't teach you how to present a plaint in the court. No law school teaches that. How are you going to do that? Now, on the very first day after I passed out, though I joined my uncle's solicitor's firm in Ahmedabad, and it was the top law firm at that time. And the very first day, my own uncle, you know, he handed over to me a brief and said, "You go to court and just ask for an examination." Now, I didn't knew ABCD of that brief, that case. I didn't even knew the names of the uh, parties. I even didn't knew whom I am going to represent in court, whether I was for the plaintiff or for the defendant. So, and he told me, my uncle said that, "Oh, you are going to go with this clerk, our court clerk." Now, at that point of time, my blood boiled like anything. I mean, I am a lawyer. How I am supposed to go with a clerk? I mean, I felt so insulting. But then, when I went with him, I understood the whole process: where to go, which table to go, how the court, how the file proceeds from the registry till the court, and what fees to be paid over the table, under the table, everything, the timeline, everything. Now today, if my junior or my clerk comes to me and say that the file is not moving, or I have to pay this much, I know whether he's saying right or wrong. So you need to understand this basic, and you need to go through this journey. Mind you, just give you another example of Reliance. Even son of Mr. Mukesh Ambani was made to undergo training under a supervisor before he joined on board. So don't feel belittled by doing this. You have to understand the trade of the profession. So you must have this kind of readiness to understand and learn the trade. Then only you will succeed. It's not going to help you just by sitting in the courtrooms at the last bench and hearing to different counsel and different proceedings. You're not going to learn. I mean, that's what many of the students do in their internships, or in their, maybe when they're free time. They just go sit. Yes, it does help you definitely, but only to those who actually, as I said, has the real seriousness about learning. If you are not there for learning, then please don't go. Now, coming to your question, ma'am. Yes, litigation is obviously not the only option right now. There are so many career options available, and one of the most lucrative and beneficial options right now, especially more after the current pandemic situation, is ADR. And why I'm saying ADR? Because see, today courts are not functioning to full strength. Right? There are issues as such of backlogs, and there are so many other issues. Now, what is to be done? And there is no, stoppage to disputes. Disputes are going to happen, and they would be increasing now, in fact. But how are you going to resolve it? So there has to be a parallel, alternate, and I would now say appropriate dispute resolution mechanism, which supplements and facilitates the traditional litigation practice, and that is what ADR does. And when I talk of ADR, more particularly of arbitration mediation, that's I think is a very, very good career option for the upcoming students to excel in this field of law. Another could be pure consultancy. You can be a consultant, a legal advisor to corporates, maybe to individual clients. I mean, see, there is a difference. You can be doing this freelancing, or you can be doing this as a lawyer in a law firm, or you can have it in your own way. But Though many of you would say, then what's the difference between lawyer and a consultant? I mean, lawyer obviously do give advice, but in my perspective, the first and foremost, uh, identity for lawyer is with court. People know us, identify us with being a lawyer because we appear in court, we argue. Here in consultancy, you are simply advising. So this goes back to the system or to the English system, which is still prevalent, where we have the solicitors and the barristers. The solicitors are simply advising and preparing everything for the barristers to argue in the court. Though this dual system is, adding cost for the litigant as such, and it is not that much prevalent in our country except in places like Mumbai and in Kolkata to a certain extent. But I would say that you can still just be a solicitor kind of a person to simply give legal advice. You can also now, again, going back to the first question, what is really required? Another aspect for improving our legal education is good faculty. We are still lacking that quality of faculty. And all this passion, aptitude, and compatibility also goes and also equally valid for faculties also. I mean, uh, since you are there, I mean, all due respect to you and all other faculties, we are still not having those kind of faculties which make the legal education at par with any other legal education across the world. We don't have that. So we need to build up even on the faculty. So that is another area where you can go for. If you have the passion, if you have the inclination on academics, please do that. We need good accommodation. We need good faculty. We need good teachers in our country. So these are another avenue. Further, what I would suggest, apart from doing your regular LLB 3 year or 5 year course, opt for some good professional development courses side by side. That will help you to pursue your to give you that push in your career compared to others. And just one example I can give you is like Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Now I am one of the directors of the India branch. The main headquarters are in London. So we know the purpose of this institution is to train people to become efficient and quality arbitrators. We don't facilitate arbitration, we just give training how to become good arbitrators. So if you do that, then we have 3 levels of membership, and these memberships are recognized across 130 countries. So you can imagine sitting in India, you get that foreign accreditation, foreign recognition, which will add up to you, to, in your career as such. So do these kind of courses. Now I have been, during this lockdown period, since there is no other, all the regular work is out and people are at home, I have been just reading every day posts from even students and others that we have done so many certificate course, we have done this online course, we have done that online course, and we have done so many, so and so forth. But my question is, have you actually learned from these online certifications? I don't think so. And please don't do that. You see, you cannot be master of everything. Try to first understand your own capabilities, your own your own passion, and then pursue all these kind of courses. Be focused, otherwise you will be, jack of all but not king of all. So there are many other I mean, with law, I think you can go for like a good another career option could be company secretary. But I'm not saying chartered accountancy, because accountancy is a very, very different field. Yes, somebody who is interested in taxation can do that, but company secretary goes along very well with law, because you have uh, business law as part of your curriculum as such even now. So why don't you do these two fusions and be, because we now need company secretary, any company would need that. So you can go even as a in-house company secretary or you can do freelancing. Though all these suggestions which I am talking about to you, it might sound like very traditional, but but understand one thing: these are going to be the norms in future also, at least to certain traditional systems. You cannot forego that. So apart from this traditional things, yes, you can have your foreign degrees and then you can join law firms, big or small. You can do in-house, you can do corporate work, you can join NGOs. There are so many options. But as I said, it all depends what actually you want, where you think you are excellent. Pursue that.
Okay, sir, actually, this was very, very informative. And what I think that because of your advice from your own life, I am sure that the participants would have, like, got the gist of it, that what they should look forward to. But I also, the participants will also want to know that we are all getting through this tough time, and during this pandemic, technology has been our friend. But as in the start of the session as well, we faced few kinds of trouble which is bound to come with the technology. So my question to you would be, that how the young professionals should adapt to this, a technological shift, because there are advantages and disadvantages of virtual learning. So what are your thoughts on it, sir?
What I would say that the young generation is already very tech savvy. I mean, you don't have to teach them the technology. I don't know how, but they have this sort of inborn understanding of the new technology. So they are tech savvy. However, the current situation, what has happened, is certainly totally new for everyone. Even if you are tech savvy, still it is something which is very new, which no one expected. But this is going to be the future as such, to certain extent. I am not saying that everything is going to become online, but yes, to certain extent, this is going to be the future. And recently, Honorable Justice Chandrachud, our Honorable Supreme Court of India, also had a talk or discussion on this particular topic. And in nutshell, his final conclusion was, which I also do agree, is that we must have a fusion of online with in-person system. That is definitely going to work. And you see, for our country, this might be something new, but for other jurisdictions, for other countries, it was going on since long. I mean, work from home was very prevalent in US and UK and other European countries since long. Even it has started to certain extent in places like Bangalore and Hyderabad, which are the IT centers in our country, to work from home. So, as you said, it does have advantage of flexibility. You don't have to worry about time. You don't have to worry about the place. I mean, all you need is maybe a smartphone and internet connection, and that's it. You are up and go. You are up and running. So you don't need anything. So you are reducing your costs. You are reducing your time factors, and obviously you are adding to flexibility. But at the same time, it has its limitations also. Now, the student would also agree with this, that you cannot sit for a long time with this kind of headphones or maybe the ear plugged in and watching totally on the screen. It affects your eyes. It affects your health as well on the longer time, on the longer duration. So it's a drawback. You have to again, sit in a particular posture. You cannot relax like this, and there are certain etiquettes you need to develop that, because it doesn't look good because you are on the camera. You are being watched. So being watched makes you more conscious, and because of that, you may not be your natural self as you want to be, and that could spoil your performance as such. So these are the issues. Secondly, we don't have our country as such, don't have that kind of bandwidth, the speed in internet to connect. We don't have. We are just even just trying to cope up with 4G, and the countries have gone. The other countries have gone to 5G and 7G for that matter. Yeah, so we lack that kind of infrastructure, IT infrastructure in our country to be on an efficient online model. Though it is working somehow, it has worked like what we are doing right now. But yes, in a long run, it cannot work in this way. We are doing this right now because of compulsion. But once things open up, this compulsion goes, we will not be doing this. So there are advantages and there are disadvantages also. Like another one is that I think I gave in one lecture. If let's say we are doing a courtroom, uh, proceeding. Normally in the courtroom, uh, in big matters, you have a senior counsel, and then there would be battery of junior and briefing counsel, and even the client, okay, of respective sides. Now, during the course of the argument, let's say the client or a junior or briefing counsel wants to say something to the senior counsel, and the senior counsel also wants to, try to seek some clarification immediately. Yeah, in-person proceeding, you can do it immediately. On online, that may not be possible. So that that kind of immediate reaction, what is required, especially in a court proceeding, would not be available in online. So there are issues, but yes, definitely there are more advantages than disadvantages considering the current scenario. And definitely the students must adapt themselves, taking that this is going to be the future as such.
Sure, sir. So thank you so much. Actually, let's take up few questions which we have received from our participants. So we'll move to this session right now. As you know that only not the students but also a lot of faculties are attending this webinar right now. So one of our faculty has this question that apart from the top law schools which are NLS and private or deemed universities, what is your advice to other law schools to provide quality or clinical legal education so that they can produce next generation lawyers? So what is your advice to that?
I would say a very, very important question and query raised by the learned faculty, and I agree that yes, as I said, our system is still very, very traditional. Even now,
Yeah.
we are still lacking, in spite of the national law schools coming up, the renowned private law schools coming up. We still lack that kind of a quality education so far as the clinical aspect of legal practice is concerned. Today, I just give one example. I mean, there are many interns who come for internship with me. One intern uh, came to a known reference, and I just saw. I think he was maybe in third year, I suppose. I don't remember, but yes, maybe in third year. So I just asked him what subject you have studied, and he has to think. He has to think for some time to tell me what subject he has studied. Now, so you see, these are the problems. Apart from that, as I said, I just also mentioned that law schools are not teaching how to even make an application before the court, how you write an application, a simple addendum application. Nothing is being. Students may, I know there are curriculum changes which has happened over a period of time. There are clinical educations being provided, but that is not enough. What I would recommend, in my personal view, is after the student finishes, or maybe during the regular teaching, maybe 1 year as a whole should be kept exclusively for practical training. Exclusively, where the student must learn the core practices, the etiquette, you know, art of the cross-examination, how drafting, leading, presentation, everything must be taught in that 1 year thoroughly. And then there should be an assessment. Now, mind you, you do have right now the curriculum do provide for moot court and clinical education, but the I have been coaching teams for moot competitions across India as well as in international competitions. But I really felt that not everybody is serious about it. Not everybody is opting for that. It is just those filtered out students who go for these kind of competition finally. But what about the others? They may have talent, or they may have that inclination, but somehow because of the system or something or the other, they are not getting that opportunity. So we must also address those students, those issues, these issues. So what I would suggest is definitely there has to be a compulsory mandatorily at least 1 year, though it is not sufficient, but at least 1 year of pure and pure clinical education. Forget about, you do it maybe side by side, or you do it after completion of your 3 years or 5 years course. But I think the 1 year which is so called being saved by this 5 year course should be utilized for this clinical practice. Then only I feel that there might be some good improvement in the legal education.
So that is a very interesting take, I must say, because actually that is the need of the hour, which we are talking about. Like similar questions which we received from our student side as well. One of the students, Aditi, she wants to know that what is the importance of clinical education in a law student's life, which you have already highlighted, but can you, sir, if you want to extend or add something to it, it would be great.
Well, as I already discussed, but I think before I go to the importance, as I said, the importance is subjective to a particular student. If the student really want to pursue law as a career, then yes, definitely clinical education is foremost important. No doubt about that. Today, you see, a literate person can definitely read direct or books. Even today I have to read direct many times books. I have to read even now. All right. So reading is not an issue. You can read on your own. No need to go to law school as such. On a broader level, what is important is how you are implementing or using that reading in practical field. That is important. And that's what you learn in clinical education. You have learned your theory in your law school, but you don't know how you're going to use that, where you're going to use, and what format. That is the importance of clinical education. And as I said, it is only important if you really want to pursue this as career, as a litigator or as a lawyer.
So you have to have the passion, then only you can take it forward, else it's all a waste of time. I totally get that, sir. One of our students have also asked that, for, as you mentioned that you will be, you're associated with CR India branch, and you are going to, you people also provide a lot of training courses. So where do they head for this? As in is the, just on the website they'll get it, or how do they go about it, sir?
See, the CR has its website. If you want, you can note down it's CIARB.org. You can go to that website. Even if you just Google out Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, you will get that website and you can do that. So far as the training aspect is concerned, we do it at different places depending upon the level of participation and response. Like what we have been doing in many places in Delhi, in Mumbai, even in Chennai. We have understanding with the Nani Palkewala Arbitration Center, where we do conduct the training. And likewise, we have this kind of understanding even with law universities like we have with Nirma, we have done in TNLU, we have done in NLU Jodhpur, and in many other places. So it all depends if, I mean, if your law college and the students are interested, we can do it at your place itself.
So, sir, actually, we have so many questions pouring in, but I'll take
Doesn't matter. I'm open for that.
That's okay, sir. So, sir, next question I'll take this one. It's very interesting. Actually, one of our students have asked that in this 21st century, how shall a young law student maintain the balance between the usage of the online resources and the using of the library and the books for gaining knowledge? So, where do they strike a balance, sir?
Well, I think the question is not of striking the balance, because you have to anyway. Library and reading books has no option. There is no second option for that. Even, I mean, you have Google right now, you have all the information available online. But to me personally, I still prefer reading books. I am not subscribed to any online journals. I would rather, ask them to send me and I read the books, because I mean, so ultimately, it is very subjective. Of course, online has a wider, reach than the books in the library. But as I said, there is no secondment to library, and you must use it as much as possible. So yes, you have to strike a balance. It all depends upon you, but the ultimate purpose should be learning and not only reading.
Okay, sir. So one more question, which has come up from our student Shanmuga Sundaram. He has asked that what should be the role of a legal student in developing the legal education in upcoming years? Do you think that the students can also play an important role in that?
Can you just repeat the first sentence of the question?
So, what should be the role of a legal student developing the legal education?
That's it. Now, this is what I was telling you. There's nothing called legal student.
Yeah.
All right? A student is a student.
Exactly.
At the most, he or she is a student of law or student of any other stream. There's nothing called legal student. So these are the important aspects. You must learn. In our time, we had a subject called interpretation of statutes. I don't know whether it's still going on, maybe in a different topic or what. But there, we used to learn how to read a provision of law.
Sir, I have a question.
Let me complete this, please, and then you can answer. I mean, then
yes.
you can.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. So today, unfortunately, what I have come across, that the students are not able to read the provision of law or any section in a way it should be read. And that's the key to a successful lawyer, how you are reading. So as a student, definitely you have even I would say a moral responsibility to the society as such to spread the knowledge of law, because what I would say is that law actually is not a any speciality to be pursued. Every citizen of a country must know the basic laws of that country. I think I just here, let me just give you one fact. Today, if you ask a general citizen, any common man, any common citizen of the country, whether they know what the Constitution of India is, the basic facets, I am not saying go into details. What are their rights and duties? Fundamental rights and duties. We don't know. We don't know. However, you go outside to countries like US and UK or other jurisdictions, at least the citizens are aware of their basic rights and duties. They don't take anything for granted, and that is why we have, instances of police atrocities. That is why people are, scared of police. Why? Because we don't know as common citizens our own rights, and that is why the police, in many cases, are taking an undue advantage. So this is one example I'm saying. So law is not meant only for students or for the lawyers. It must be spread across the society. And what I would suggest, if you really want to do something as a student, spread it down. Go to school, secondary, higher secondary students, teach them. We do have subjects in schools like social studies and civics. We do, when I was in school, we have a subject called civics, where we used to get the knowledge of the basic fundamental rights and duties of citizen of a country. Make them understand. As a student, if you really want to do something for the society, do this. Go to school, teach the school students, maybe your own community for that matter. Do this. You can do this. There's nobody stopping you. So it's not that you have to be a teacher. If you know the basics, you must spread it, share it.
So I guess this has been a very very enriching for the students, because they should also know that where they can extend themselves to what extent they can extend themselves to for the society, and how can they be helpful. So one last question we are waiting from Sayantan Roy. He can also type it and send it across. But before that, one more question from Nityanand, which I also want to know, because what are the changes we are expecting after this post-COVID scenario? Is anything to look forward in legal education per se post-COVID? Do you think there would be a huge change or something, or we'll try to go back to normal?
See, definitely things are going to get normal, but it would take some time. So we should not be panicked or scared. Yes, we must accept the reality that this particular virus or situation is not going to go that easily. All right. So we need to adapt ourselves in our lives as such. So there would be definitely many changes. Life to certain extent is not going to be the same as it is now, at least for some time to come. So what we need to know, and what we need to do, is to adapt ourselves to the demanding situation. And now coming to the question as such, and from the law perspective as such, definitely there's going to be a good amount of change in the legal education system as such, and also from the point of view of requirements coming from the clients as such, from the system as such, from the beneficiaries. Now, when I'm talking of this, definitely technology will be the key. How quickly you are adapting to the technological advancements will be the key. Now, let me tell you here, in many countries, already the artificial intelligence system as such of we are facilitating for the legal services have already started. We are still thinking of it, but they have already started. So from a young student's perspective, or maybe a lawyer's perspective, I think post-COVID, these kind of technological advancements are going to be the norm, and you must be ready to adapt to this. Secondly, there would be more, issues on the IT point of view. We have already started on data piracy and data protection, cyber laws. So I think cyber law will be a very important subject now post this scenario. And of course, from a general perspective, how quickly you are adapting, how flexible you are, how reasonable you are, and the most important aspect, how humble and human you are will be the key.
Thank you so much, sir. We have not received the question yet. We were waiting for, but I guess we will call it a day
There was
because of
someone who
yeah. We were
uh,
expecting the question from him, but I have not received it yet. So that's okay, sir. We will, because we so many due to the time constraint, I don't think so we will be able to take up more. But I would like to thank you so much for actually having such an enriching session here. And in my opinion as well, sir, I go like totally agree with you that because we have to keep up with the changing world dynamics, we have to discuss all these things because this is the need of the hour. So that's all from today, like today from our end here. And I hope all the participants are staying safe and taking their, care of themselves and their loved ones. So before I say a final goodbye to everyone here, so sir, we would like to actually hear from you the parting message for the participants. So please.
um, as I already said that the key is how quick you are adapting. Don't be panicked. Future is really bright, so don't be scared. Just be focused on whatever you are passionate about doing it and follow it up seriously. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And I would request the participants as well to, if you want to follow, for us, I mean, to, follow Chettinad Academy of Research and Education. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you so much for joining in to all the participants, and especially grateful to sir for, delivering such an enriching session. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
I just have one suggestion. I mean,
Yes, sir.
you can share my email ID with the participants who
Perfect,
have
sir.
any
Sure.
questions, who want to have
Yes.
any issues, who want to get some guidance.
Yeah.
I am always available, so you can share my email ID, and I will love to be helpful to them.
Sure, sir. Sure. So all the participants, they can write us in also on our mail ID, and we can share the contact of sir so that you can get through and through, guidance in your mooting sessions and everything, and wherever you want to lead to. So thank you so much, sir, for all the help and amazing session which we have. I hope you enjoyed too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So that will be all from our end today. Bye and take care.